Any suggestions? What's diversity? Yes, please? Difference, yes. What kind of difference, for example? Demographics, very good. What else? Ideas. Cultures? Cultures? Yes. Yeah. Experience, yes. So you already see diversity is not just gender. So let me start with Katja here because that is her research subject. So what's diversity from the academic perspective?
Thank you. So yeah, you made already a very good point. It's severity within a group, right? And that can differ very much, right? It can be gender, it can be religion, it can be education. But also diversity is really a source of different perspectives, right? And how can we bring diversity to life? So the prerequisite for diversity is actually inclusion, right? If people do not feel included, then they will never speak up, right? They will not bring their diversity to the field, right? So that is very important also to really make somebody feel included in order to make use of that diversity, because it has a lot of benefits, and I'm sure we will talk about that later on as well.
And if we're talking about inclusion, I'm sure some of us here have felt on the one side privileged because maybe there's men here in the audience and men have certain advantages in, for example, the business world. But on the other hand, you may have felt not included, maybe because of your culture, maybe because of your demographics, etc. So we can be two things at the same time. We can be privileged and discriminated against. And that is actually one of the challenges of diversity, because there's always yet another factor which is not taken into account. But let me then ask Zainab, because she is a venture capitalist, and from a business perspective, because that's how they think, why diversity? What's the advantage?
Sure. So I like the fact that you included the audience as well as part of this. And everyone mentioned great points: gender, ethnicity, demographics. So obviously there is an impact of having a diverse team or a diverse board, and it could be a number of things. So we invest usually at an early stage and the board is not formed yet. So this could be applicable both on a board level and a founding team level. So these are the things like, for example, you have more efficient decision making that could be there, given that you have different experts, different backgrounds within the teams or within the board. And that could foster more innovation and creativity at the same time. When it comes to identifying like blind spots from different experts that have experienced different things, they could see it from a different perspective versus other members of the team. Also, another thing is you want to make sure that by having a diverse board, it could lead to having a stronger network for the business itself and building up the business in terms of partnerships in other markets, in terms of fundraising. By having a diverse board, you'll be able to have access to different things. When it comes to like market expansion as well, by having different people on the board and people from different markets, obviously there's different consumer behavior, consumer preferences. So they will give you more insights to the different target audience that you're looking at in different markets. And it will help you pinpoint other areas in the businesses that. So, for example, there's a lot of companies or founders that are struggling with, let's say, they're very familiar with the product itself, but struggling with generating leads or converting leads, or on the marketing side, on the legal side. So by having diverse experts, you can also get access to more of those things. And also, like you mentioned, I love to empower women. So also women have different perspectives. So having a woman on the board as well could have a great impact, because the experiences that women go through compared to men is very different. And some examples of that would be, for example, like 30% of our portfolio is female founders. We love to empower women because they have experienced different things and went through different problems compared to men, and they're able to tackle those problems and solve them in a different way. while still keeping it diverse?
That is a very good point, because it's not just that we're talking about diversity here, we're talking about diversity specifically for boards. And maybe I should add that this has been a topic I've been passionate about for many years, because boards in the past have been a little bit ticks the box, for startups in particular. Mostly they were coming from the investors. But in the last 10 years, those have become more professional, and boards have become more important, not just from the eyes of the investors, from the eyes of the regulators as well, and more even from the eyes of the organization itself. Because what do boards do? What is the primary objective of a board? And let's ask the audience again. So what is a board for? Governance, yes. Strategic direction, very good. Monitor progress. Accountability. Yes, there can't be conflict of interest. They have to be careful about their own, and they have to monitor that they don't happen within their business. Excellent. So you see, a lot of the answers have to do with governance, with transparency. Now, Zainab already mentioned the blind spots. So a diverse board is better in finding out about risks and blind spots. And just to add on the women's side, I have learned that women on boards are the ones who very often bring up some of the tough topics in a good way. Not in a way, let's fight with each other, but in a way that they bring up the elephant in the room. And then sometimes, I don't want to generalize too much, but sometimes they bring the collaborative, solution-oriented style, where it's not about fighting against each other, but finding a solution together. So if we're coming to the question of decision-making and what diversity, because decision-making is what boards do. They don't execute, they make decisions for the company. So Katja, what is the difference that a diverse board brings into the decision-making, and more importantly, how do they do it?
Yeah, thanks again for the question. Research shows that if you are more diverse, that, as you also mentioned, you have a better decision-making progress and better solutions. You are more innovative, more creative, right? However, and that also to your question, how do we implement it? Doesn't help if you have a board that is diverse, looking at the numbers, right? We have all the genders there, we have all the culture there, we have all the backgrounds there. The key is really, how do you make these people feel that they belong, that they're included, right? That they're part of it, and that they don't leave, right? Because if nobody's asking them for their opinion, they will probably not be happy on that board, right? Because they want to speak up. So the key is really how to include them, how to make them feel they belong, they are needed. And that is really the key question. And when it comes to implementation, and that shouldn't be just a compliance checkbox or a lip service, right? That we have a diverse board. No, you really need to bring that diversity to life, and then everyone can benefit from it, and you will feel the benefits from diversity to better decision-making progress, better performance, right? But that is also a little bit of a cultural shift, right? Because that doesn't come like overnight. How do you make people feel included, right? You need to have an inclusive leadership. You need to have an inclusive climate, an inclusive culture, right? And that takes time. And you also need to implement a listening strategy, maybe, because that differs also from groups, organizations, right? What does inclusion mean? What does it mean if you want to belong to the team, to the company, right? So it's a very, very challenging topic, but it has lots of opportunities, everyone will benefit from it.
So maybe to build on that, because Zainab and I had a discussion beforehand, and part of the diversity is as well how to find the best fit, how to compose a board that really adds value to that particular organization. So Zainab, maybe you want to take that.
Yeah, I think there's a big mistake that startups usually do, especially when it comes to setting up. One of the biggest mistakes is that their goal is basically to get the funding for the startup rather than seeing it more of bringing added value or a strategic investor on board. And that's the first step of it. So to avoid that mistake of just bringing any person onto the board and looking at it more on a short-term level rather than in a long-term vision of the company and how that person could actually support the business moving forward. So when it comes to setting up the board itself, just like VCs do their due diligence on startups, startups should also do due diligence on who they're bringing on board and why this person or this investor is actually adding value to them. Is it their network, their experience in different markets, their expertise in the product, their expertise in selling the product, partnerships? It could be various reasons, and how they could actually support rather than just putting the funding in. And that's by adding that factor, they'll be able to set up the board. Other ways could be, for example, if they plan to expand into other markets, they could bring someone local onto the board who has more experience in that market and understands consumer behavior and preferences to help them set up the board. And like I said, having at least a woman, because they have different perspectives and may understand the product or see the product in a different way than the founder does, and identify those gaps.
And maybe I can add to that list, which is very important, another dimension which I've been exploring with some of my clients, and we're exploring currently as well, because Zainab spoke mostly about experience and cognitive knowledge and abilities. But there's something which too often we overlook, and that goes back to the inclusion, and that's actually both the mindset and attitude and the soft skill of the board. Because in the end, what you want in a board is a high-performing team. And you may have all heard about Project Aristotle from Google, where they identified the foundations for high-performing team. One of the foundations is actually something very, very simple. And I'm not actually talking about psychological safety here, which is not simple. I'm talking about equal contribution. So for any of you who are on boards, or who have boards, or even are on a C-suite team, equal contribution of everybody in the team creates both better knowledge, both better collective intelligence, better decision-making, and frankly, a better feeling from everybody on the team. So some of the things which we haven't looked at in the past too much are things which are now more and more explored. They're the so-called soft skills, and I'm currently exploring which of the soft skills are the most important for boards, because boards are different from a C-suite team. So in a C-suite, you may have a strong decision maker, a change agent who charges ahead. On a board, collaboration is more important. If you have too strong a chairman, he may drown out the other voices. So that is another perspective of the diversity of the board, having complementary skills within your board. And considering the time, I really would like to wrap it up now. We could discuss way longer, but just as a last takeaway, and let's start with Katja here, because the time to act is now, to create good boards, especially for your startups. So Katja, what do you want to give them to take away?
If you want to benefit from diversity, focus on inclusion and belonging. Yeah, for me, it's mostly like having teams with different skill sets that complement each other and working together as one team and having a collective decision. Having a diverse board as well as having a diverse team as well. And when you speak about including, you need to also include your teams, because they're working on in different departments, understanding the products and building on it. So listen to them and their perspective, get feedback, just like you expect to get feedback from your customers to develop the product itself. And empower.
I'm totally in agreement with empowering more women. You will benefit, I assure you. And the only takeaway from my side here is the time to act is now. Look at your board with care and intent, and you will benefit. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you.